Now, I do have a question for both you and Ian. I've told you about Dad next door. I call him Dad, and he believes that we should have government. And I try to have these debates with him. I'm more toward the Mark Stevens philosophy and Ian's philosophy of absolutely no government. And I've heard you guys both have a discussion, and I would like to ask that question. Mark, you seem to be somewhat pro-government. What do you see that we need government for?
I don't know. So the thing is that we're in a situation where we haven't had an opportunity to try this whole voluntarism thing out. And it's not that I don't believe that people should be able to try their own forms of governance, and I think they should. I think that that's what any just organization would allow people to try their own forms of government out.
Well, Mark, you make an important distinction, and I tend to agree with it. And I'm still guilty of using the term government, but your distinction is that there's a difference between the state and the government, or the state and government as an idea.
Sure, government.
Because I support self-government. There's nothing wrong with self-government. Control yourself. Don't be dangerous or
But I think
ridiculous.
that people need more than self-government. I think they need to be governed, and they will be governed. They will be governed. The question is, what will that government look like, and will there be an option? Will there be options? So I think we're best served by government organizations that have to directly compete against each other. And by that, I mean the governments are no longer tied to the land. In the same way that you can get AT&T
So you would be talking
service,
about getting rid of the state, but not the idea of government.
Right. The state is a monopolist, of course.
Governance might be a better word, unless I'm hearing you incorrectly.
He's advocating governance. He's saying that he supports that.
But there's a difference, right? Because government, we have a picture of that. We have a picture of what that is. But governance is rules. So, like in this case, we could be talking about like dispute resolution organizations.
Well, I am talking about that.
Okay.
But the fact is that you need to communicate with your audience every single time. And the fact is that there is a strong meme in the world that, well, it's not like we can live without government. And you're not going to fight that, and I'm not going to fight that, and it's not worth fighting. What they say what they mean when they say that is that we must have rules by which people live. And I think that's absolutely true. We must have organizations that enforce rules by which we will live. And therefore, there will always be government. Now, to think for a moment the kind of hubris that it takes to think that somehow a limited republic or whatever this is supposed to be, or whatever government is somewhere in the land, is the end pinnacle of human government is a ludicrous notion.
Sure.
So, but governments need to be able to evolve, and because they're monopolies, it's very difficult for innovation to enter into the marketplace. So, all I propose is that we have some opportunity for innovation, and governments that they find that abhorrent.
Well, the water is a little muddy there too, because one person's evolution of government is chaos for another person. Like if you think about what we would consider, if government still had to exist, an evolution in the scope of government, what we would say is an evolution considering the scope of government, the size of government. Other people would see that as the end of the world. The progressives would see that as the end of the world.
Well, that's because the progressives wish to rule other people.
They certainly do.
They are petty slave owners, and they will not claim it for themselves. I, however, am willing to give you, I'm for this whole sort of small government constitution thing, right? Let's go ahead and do that. But I don't think that you or Ian should be tied to that. If you want to take the land that you own, turn it into some sort of voluntarist state, you should be able to try that out on your land. If you want to get together collectively with other people and try that out.
You can combine voluntarist with state.
Okay.
Well, here
state's a criminal organization of violence. Go ahead.
Voluntarist nation?
Okay, well, this is the debate or the question, I guess, that my dad, I call him Dad, next door says. He says right now, and he refers to the broken people. There are so many people that are on the government dole and getting a paycheck from the government. How do you end this?
How do you deal with that? That's a great question.
Having...
We'll come back with it. Thanks, Tom, for the call. How do you deal with these, as he put it, broken people, welfare addicts, both regular and corporate, of course, and military? More on the way here. 855 450 free. It's Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, and of course, you can bring up anything that you want. Just dial in toll free At 8:55, 450 free. That's 855-450-3733. With you tonight, it's Ian,
Brett,
and Mark.
We'll continue with your calls and thoughts. Actually, our last caller brought up a question at the very end of his call. I wanted to make sure we had a chance to address it, and actually, I think one of our other callers wants to address it as well. The question of how do you, if we want to go to some sort of a voluntarist or even a very small government world, which I think most of the hosts of the show would agree with, at least one or two of those statements, how do you deal with the transition? Because it's easy
The
for us
transition's huge. It's the only question.
Yeah.
The fact is, human freedom is on the rise in the world. People want more freedom for themselves.
It's those other people that they don't want freedom
right,
for.
absolutely.
That's the problem.
They're all worried about them other folks. There's no doubt about it. But human freedom is an end result that is very likely. The question is, how do you manage it from here to there?
So I want to get back to the question.
Yeah,
of, like, what do you do
absolutely.
with what was determined or what was termed broken people? The broken people, the people who have for many years, perhaps over generations, even in their families, been hooked on welfare.
Government employees,
military, contractors,
people that work for companies that have large government contracts,
right. And average welfare recipients as well. These people who are so dependent on the state, old folks being taken care of by the state,
disabled,
etc.
Social Security.
So what do you do about that? Your proposal, you Liberty folks, is to get rid of the state. And now what are you going to do with all these people that are expecting to get a check for their disability or their Social Security or their military pension or their police pension or whatever after a certain period of time? What do you do about that?
Well, it sounds like the question's set up where we have to push some kind of a button. You know, that's something that we've talked about on the show before. I don't think it works like that. I think
well,
that
how would it work?
Well, I think as government becomes more financially strained, I mean, this is just, a hypothesis that as government becomes more financially strained, and we're seeing that in all different parts of government, they're going to have to start turning services over to not, privatizing to contractors that they pay, but really letting some things go into the market.
Right. Well, this is a reality, right? Like every single government that isn't here any longer failed.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Okay. It's like there's three classes of governments: the ones that will come in the future, the ones that we currently have, and the ones that have failed in the past. And every one that we have today is going to move into category 3 at some point. So therefore, you recipients of whatever government largesse there is out there, you are living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
We don't know when. We don't know how, we don't know where, but we do know
at some
that
point,
it is going to stop.
The party's going to be over.
The party's over.
The check's going to stop.
My question I would have for you is, in what way am I obligated to hold your hand through this?
That's not
and
the
the
right
fact
answer.
is, wait. I think that this is really important. This is a reality, and you need to step up and be a grown adult about it. That I am not obligated to give you any answer about what's going to happen. I'm happy to give you an answer. I just want you to understand that my answer is a gift from me to you. And that, the cold, hard truth of reality will lop your head off, whether you like it or not. But I'll go ahead and I'll give you an answer. The U.S. government has assets, and the U.S. government isn't an entity. It is supposed to be all of us. Those assets, therefore, are owned by all of us. I don't believe that is possible. I would like to believe that a government that is owned by all of us would give the least of us as much as it could on the way out. However, that government all governments always have and always will be controlled by the rich, the powerful, and the elite. So they're going to take all that government land, all those government buildings, and all that government stuff made of metal, and they're going to keep it for themselves, and they're not going to give you a cent out of it. But they should.
Yeah,
they should sell all that crap and give the money to other people. If you think they're going to, you're just as much of a fool as I think you are.
It went that way with the Soviets.
Of course it did.
It was a couple handfuls of people who walked away with the remaining wealth of the whole USSR.
Yeah.
Well, look, there have been situations that have happened, within the last few years where certain things have come up with different governments, state and even the federal government, where they've been in a pinch, where, well, sorry, folks, your welfare checks just aren't coming this month. We're going to get you paid. Or I don't know if it was Social Security.
California.
But California went through this.
They're sending IOUs.
Detroit, of course, is in notoriously bad shape, and they can't pay their power bills. So, there are situations where people who had been expecting checks were told, well, we're going to get to you. California was a great example of that, and they probably did get to them eventually because they managed to shore up their finances with who knows what, some sort of financial magic. These things can't last forever, though. And when those incidents come up, then we are really seeing that being addressed in real life. What would happen if, or when rather, a state or federal government just, sorry, we don't have enough money coming in, and the state of California can't print the money, so they were really in a difficult spot, and those people did have to go without a check for a month, and that's when people are going to start stepping up. And it's not an easy answer to put out there, but that's when humans who care, people in a neighborhood, people in a community, in a church, in various different organizations are going to step up, and they're going to take care of the people in their community just like they always have before government with mutual aid societies.
But what you're not going to have is entitlements. You're not going to have that I owe you a check for $600 or whatever the menial amount is that they get on a monthly basis. You're going to have that point. That's charity, and people are going to have to ask for it, and that's going to really get rid of some of the hangers-on.
We'll come back with more. Your thoughts are welcome on how to deal with the so-called broken people in the transition to more freedom. Free Talk Live. Hey, Jim.
Hey, guys. I was going to come out of left field and ask you about Gaza, but you have not enough time. Let's let some other people talk about that. So I want to talk about what you were talking about, which is what do you do with the takers if you devolve to a free government? And I'm a conservative. I think we already have a system. If we just had the federal government running the Navy and the post office, and you guys up there in New England have like those little towns, what are they called, townships, and little small.
They call them townships in New Jersey.
Yeah,
they don't
towns.
do that in New Hampshire.
Sorry, forgive me, please. But I'm thinking of the Norman Rockwell painting of the guy in the town hall. I'm thinking every small little town ought to be its own little fiefdom and run just about everything. And the federal government can run the 16 little small things that the Constitution set up for it. And then you could have, you guys could take over like Keene or something, and you could have like, really out there stuff, and you could have very conservative, you could have crazy liberal, one town could have cocaine is legal, and the other town could have prohibition. And then you could have like they say the states are laboratories of democracy. You could have that, times 6,000 or whatever.
I think that's a fine idea.
I think it's a great idea, and I think that's
but I
what
say get rid of the federal government.
Sort of meant to be generally, but the problem is that power tends to concentrate.
Yeah.
And
so you've got to get rid of the feds.
Well, I mean,
and then the state governments.
Where's it going to concentrate to? I don't know, but it tends to concentrate, and the people, wealthy people, those in business, they tend to want to have that power because they don't want the power used against them. So it's sort of this conundrum. As long as the power is there, the power of monopoly is there, people are going to want to use it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim, for the call, man. Appreciate it. Let's get Billy on the line here in southern Utah. You're on Free Talk Live. Billy.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.